Welcome everyone to today's session on delivering business planning for your clients. We've just got a couple of housekeeping items to move forward. And Viv, you don't mind going to the next slide, thank you. So we're using Zoom today. I'm sure most of you are super familiar with it. We've got a couple of tips on using it below. Just two key things: make sure you have speaker view switched on the top right-hand corner. And please do send in your questions via the chat pane. I'll be keeping an eye on them. If possible, I may interject if it's really relevant to something that Viv is talking about. Otherwise, we'll do our best to answer them all at the very, very end. So my name is Charles Clark. I'm Marketing Director for Boma, and joining me today is Viv Brownrigg of The Gap. Before co-founding The Gap, Viv built her own accounting firm, so she gets it. She gets you guys. She understands the challenges. I think it's going to be fantastically positioned to talk about the subject of business planning. So welcome, Viv.
Thanks, Charles, and you've really set me up there, haven't you? That's a lovely intro, but look, I'll do my best to get some good advice and education out there to the people online. Fantastic.
So look, for anyone who isn't familiar with The Gap or Boma, and I know that we do have lots of Gappies and lots of Boma users on today, but for anyone else, a quick background into why we partnered together. So when we were first starting out with Boma a few years ago, and we were building it as a marketing tool for accountants, and we did have a content library with our early partners, Xero, and obviously our own content, but we saw the Gap's content and we were really blown away, and we saw that it would be an amazing addition to our content library and would really complement it and our platform amazingly. And so with Boma and the Gap's business development systems, it really enables you to work smarter, not harder. That's what we're both all about. So between the two of us, Boma and The Gap, we're basically a marketing campaign toolkit, or a marketing campaign in a virtual box, if you will. So we're all about helping you save tons of time when it comes to building close relationships with your clients, enabling you to promote and offer services that will help you support clients and drive growth, and also prospecting for new clients. So look, enough about us. Now let's get on to the main guts of this. Before we get started, I just thought it would be useful to cover this quote, which is from the book Le Petit Prince, or The Little Prince. And I just thought it'd be really useful to hold this in your mind as Viv takes us through today's topic in particular. So Viv, why don't I hand over to you, and I'll keep an eye on people's questions.
Wonderful. Thanks, Charles. And I just want to reiterate that we really love the partnership with Boma. We work really well together. We've done a lot to help each other grow our product and the number of firms we work with. So, you know, it's great to have such a deep and kind of meaningful partnership with Boma. So let's crack underway. A bit to get through. Crash course on business planning in 35 minutes, but hey, we can do it. So what we're going to cover this afternoon, we're going to cover the planning, understanding the planning process, the structure, and I call this the science around helping your clients get a business plan together. We're going to talk about the importance of your client doing the heavy lifting and contributing to the business plan, i.e. doing some pre-work. And there's a message in here for all of your meetings. There's value in your clients doing pre-work for all of your meetings, and the Gappies in the room absolutely understand what I'm talking about there. We're going to drill down into how you actually deliver the session, but we're also going to talk about improved facilitation skills. This is the art behind running any sort of meeting or being a facilitator. Remembering, when you're helping a client do their business plan, this is their plan, it's not your plan. So you're simply the facilitator. And you don't have to be great at this. You start and you learn and you get on the journey and you get better and better, but you have to start somewhere. We're going to talk about how to leverage your return with a system. So you've got everything in your toolkit so you can just hit the ground running. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you market these services. Now, before I crack into really covering that essential annual business plan, and I'm talking about a really functional business plan for the small to medium-sized business, all those mum and dad businesses, on one page front and back. I'm not talking about a 30-page business plan. Your client, when they've got a business plan, if they can't remember and recite their 3 or 4 or 5 annual goals in that business plan, then it's not a very good plan and it may as well stay in the bottom drawer. But I want to put this into context with what we call internally here at The Gap, the trifecta of business advisory services. These are the 3 essential tools that every real business, not those hobby businesses, not those micro businesses, but every real business deserves. An annual plan so they can set some goals, some 90-day goals, and what they're going to do to make sure those goals turn into reality. The annual forecast, how they're going to plan for growth, what cash flow is going to be doing, and then ongoing reports that they can understand and trust with a wraparound accountability system so they do the things they said they'd do. We can call that coaching. I know that that's not necessarily a word you all love. We can call it accountability instead. So the business plan, the annual business plan, because it happens every year, is just one of those 3 essential tools. So just before we really crack into the art of facilitation, I just want to talk about some basic rules for developing a business plan with your client. First of all, it's a pretty obvious thing to say, but the directors, owners, the key decision makers must be involved. And anyone that attends the business planning session, and in the context of how we do it here at The Gap and how we teach our Gap member firms to facilitate these planning sessions, we're talking about a 4-hour business planning session. So every attendee should do individual pre-work, and we'll talk about why that's so important very shortly. It's really important that your clients have somebody independent to facilitate this process. Now, your client may look at you and say, look, I can grab a business planning template on the internet. Well, there's probably 85,000 hits there in terms of a business planning template. But will they DIY well? Probably not. They may not even get off ground zero. So it's going to be much more effective when they've got an independent facilitator. That person they know, like, trust. That person's a sounding board. That person's got experience in business. That person knows a thing or two about their numbers and their goals. And guess who that person is? That person should be you. So the accounting firm and the bookkeeping firm, you're beautifully positioned and primed to do this work. It should be on one page, front and back. And any detail that doesn't really belong in the business plan, that can sit in some minutes off to the side. So we don't want to clutter the business plan up with things that don't really belong there. We want it short, succinct, to the point, so that they can remember the key elements of that business plan. After the business planning session, the business owners should share that with other stakeholders and perhaps even with their team. Now, they may want to massage some elements in the plan, maybe take out some of the numbers so that any commercially sensitive information isn't shared, but they should certainly be sharing the vision and the goals with the wider team. They should be reporting against that plan monthly, and in other words, tracking their progress. And the goals, the 90-day goals and the 90-day actions should be updated quarterly. And then, of course, you get into an annual rhythm of a full annual review. So that's kind of some basic rules for helping your clients develop a business plan. Now, the system is absolutely critical. So, for example, if we start here, the client commits to the business planning process. They've signed off the proposal. That's the easy bit done. Now, a week before the business planning session, or at least a week before the business planning session, you're going to send some pre-work to all those attending the session. And because you do not want to get into a meeting of discovery, you want to discover what the issues are, what the challenges, what the goals are before the business planning session. Now, the client's pre-work actually sets the agenda, and you've got some fully scoped delivery notes, so you know exactly what categories you're going to be covering in the 4-hour session so that you get through it on time. You have the session, and at that session, as you populate the business plan with your client, you're doing it together. That's creating their commitment to change. They're agreeing that they are committed to these goals and these actions. It's their plan, it's not yours. And then, of course, off they go to start implementing those actions and achieving those goals. And hopefully we've got a nice quarterly cycle where you've got an accountability rhythm with them, where you can make sure you update the plan with them, and they're achieving, completing their actions and getting closer towards achieving those goals. Now, I talked before about client pre-work being absolutely essential, and it is. You really want to avoid, client pre-work works with any client meeting, even the annual accounts review meeting. What you want to avoid is getting into a meeting and discovering that there's this massive issue between the partners. They're not aligned in the business, and it takes you half of the business planning allotted time to get to that point. So the client pre-work's essential. You're going to get alternative views, and you're going to be able to spot where the partners, the owners, are misaligned. They think differently about something important before you get into the business planning session. So you want to avoid those surprises. You're also using this as an opportunity to give everyone a voice. Some of the business owners may be a bit more quiet, a bit more introspective, and I often find that the quieter people often have the most to say. So we want to give them a voice so that we can gain some deeper insights and avoid that meeting of discovery where we just don't know where we're going for the first hour, and it just speeds up the meeting and makes it so much more powerful for your client. Okay, let's talk a little bit about your role as facilitator. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is that a facilitator is very different to an advisor. When you are an advisor, you tend to tell your clients what needs to be done. So, for example, your client rings you up and says, how much tax do I have to pay, or what structure should I put my new business into? And of course, you're going to give them advice. You're the expert. You're going to tell them what you think they should do. That is not your role as a facilitator. As a facilitator, you are directing the traffic. You're making sure everyone has their say. You're making sure you get through the agenda, and you're making sure that business plan gets populated within that 4-hour period. And there'll be times when you may want to give them advice during that planning session. And all you have to do is pop that hat off as facilitator and ask, would you like me to give you some advice around that? Would you like to know what I think you should do there? Would you like to know what I'd do if I were in your shoes? So just remember, ask permission to give advice. Don't let people dominate the session. And there's lots of ways to get to the quieter ones, and your pre-work's going to help you to do that. I think we all know, as accountants and bookkeepers, you have to be ready for a few tears occasionally. When you go down into these business planning sessions, out will come some frustrations with the business, and out will come some real stressors that are affecting the business owners. So don't be surprised when that happens. I think we've all sat in the seat and know that clients tell us pretty much everything. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about some coaching attributes which will help you with those facilitation skills. Now, we have a star here. We call this 5-star coaching, which is pretty funny because it's 1 star. It's not 5 stars, but it's got 5 points. And I want to cover each of these 5 points very briefly. The first one is this synergize part of the star. 1 + 1 = 5. And it sounds really cheesy, I know. But the fact is, you have a lot of skill and a lot of knowledge. You've been in business. You've developed your own business. You know these people's numbers really well. You've seen other businesses come and go. They know a lot technically and operationally about their business. So together, it's a pretty awesome team. And you bring those skills together, and 1 + 1 = a lot more than 2. The second point on the star is we need to empower our clients. rather than create dependency. So we're trying to build great leaders. So we can't do everything for them. We're guiding them to decide the steps that they need to take. And they do have a lot of the answers, and we can get those answers out of them if we ask the right questions. The third point on the star is accountability. When you give advice to a client, it doesn't mean they're going to go away and do it, does it? How many times have you suggested to a client they do something? How many times does that actually happen? But if we develop an accountability framework around the business plan, so maybe we're catching up for an hour, updating the plan, sending them some pre-work before we do that, every quarter, it creates accountability. It's no different to me going to my personal trainer every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock. I've got to turn up for Brenda. I do not want to be late. I want to make sure I've looked after myself in the week preceding. So we want to create a bit of accountability so that people go and do things for themselves, and they become better at implementing. We want to focus on the root causes versus the symptoms, and we want to put context before content. So we need to understand what the issues are rather than blurting out an answer. So for example, if the gross profit margin is down 5 points on last year, we just can't blurt out a piece of advice such as you need to put your prices up 10%. They may have tried that, it may have failed, it may not be appropriate in their business. There could be a number of causes for their margin being down. So we seek first to understand. We do that by asking questions rather than telling them what they should do. So these are all things that assist us to become great accountability coaches and help us start to get towards mastering the art of facilitation. By the way, you never master the art. It's just a journey. It's just something that with experience, you just get a little bit better at it every year. In terms of actually facilitating the 4-hour session, we're going to go down into how you deliver it shortly. You need a system. And I know there's lots of GAP member firms in the room, and you've got a system, you've got delivery notes, you've got the pre-work sorted, you've got the framework for the business planning template, you've got the framework for the minutes that you'll keep, you've got all the emails that go with it, you've got that framework, and the delivery notes are fundamental here. But if you don't have to do it our way, as long as you're doing business planning with your clients, it really doesn't matter. But whatever you do, have a system and make sure everyone in your team who's delivering this service is doing it fundamentally pretty much the same way. So you've got a good, consistently high value product. It's really good to know 3 or 4 mindsets. Things like the ORBED mindset: ownership, accountability, responsibility, blame, excuse, deny. Write that down. ORBED, all over the internet. Just a few mindsets. We've got tons of them in the GAP, but just knowing 3 diagrams that you can draw to help your clients understand something in their business. It could simply just be, here are the 7 ways to grow your business. Learn how to position your value, and don't be ashamed of that. At the end of the business planning session, position the value in you catching up for an hour every quarter to make sure they've done the things they said they'd do in the business plan, and to make sure the business plan gets updated. Don't be shy. Show some hospitality. These are easy wins. Make sure people have water, they have some chocolate to eat, they have that you serve nice tea and coffee and not in the chipped mugs, and that you actually have some nice food at the coffee break time, and make sure they're in a comfortable space and that they've got room to doodle, and they just feel really comfortable because they're going to be stretching a little bit out of their comfort zone, particularly if it's the first time that they've been through this service with you. Make sure you take breaks. I know that you and I and Charles, we're all used to being nailed to our desk for hours at a stretch, aren't we, Charles? But our clients aren't the same. And this is kind of really heavy mental thinking for them. So make sure you take breaks. And yes, you can run a business planning session online, totally doable. Lots of us have been doing that a lot over the last 2.5 years. And my recommendation would be to do one of two things: either run the 4-hour session with a half-hour gap or an hour gap in the middle where people can go off and have a good break, or even better, run the first 2 hours on the morning of day one and then do the next 2 hours on the morning of day two, because 4 hours online is impossible for your clients. It's just too hard. And consider, if you are doing face-to-face, if you're at that point now, hosting it off-site. Get your clients out of their comfort zone, get them away from where they get interruptions in their own business so they really can think and no one's going to pester them. Make sure you share wins with them. This should be a good, fun experience. It's fun work, it's great work, and share wins with them. And I'll just give you a little hint here. And this is part of our delivery system for business planning. At the end of that business planning process, I want to encourage you to ask a question that probably scares you a little bit. And the question is, what value did you get from this business planning session? What 3 things of value did you get? And you'll be absolutely amazed at what clients tell you. And this will help you to reinforce their learnings from the business planning session, and you'll type those things into the minutes. But it's also going to be a great thing to put in the success bank for you. Great at boosting your confidence, because you don't know the value they got unless you ask. And this is going to be a great way of building your confidence in delivering these services. And every once in a while, we all have a low point. We all need to dive down into the success box. I call it my happy box, and remind ourselves of some of the good work that we do and have done in the past. So make sure you do that. Okay, so what I am going to do now, I am just going to, and I don't know if we've got any questions so far that you want to put to me, Charles, but
yeah, just one quickly from Kirsty, who said, when you say that so they should be looking at reporting it monthly and updating it quarterly, is that to you and part of the fee? So that was a little bit earlier on in the conversation.
Certainly the owners should be monitoring their own progress against the plan every month, but there should be, yeah, absolutely, but there should be, otherwise everything all happens in the last quarter, doesn't it? Which is not good for the business and not good for the people in the business. But certainly there should be a formal reset of the plan every quarter, where those 90-day goals are refreshed. Some of them may have been achieved, others may not have been. A couple of them may not be relevant anymore. And the 90-day goals refreshed. Okay, so that's the distinction there. Okay, so I'm just going to show you, I am actually in the GAP business planning service at the moment, and I'm actually in the delivery section. I'm just going to show you 4 things, because this helps you to put into context how you actually deliver these services. So I'm just going to show you the pre-work, and this will help you to understand the value in pre-work. So you're going to send this electronically to your client, and you're going to get it back a couple of days before the business planning session. So I'd be sending it probably 7 to 10 days before the business planning session. And so you'll put the client details and it'll pick it out from your database. Nice email. And so here's some questions. Now, it's very interesting. We did a little bit of a interview of a few firms over the last few weeks in terms of how they're using our pre-work. And the feedback back was, hey, look, it works, and you guys have nailed the content. We really don't change it very often. So don't get hung up on screening this and going, oh, I'm not sure if I could change this word, or maybe that could read a bit differently. Don't worry about that. Go with the 80-20 rule. It just works beautifully. And we've had a lot of experience in this place. We've now got 460 firms across New Zealand, Australia, UK running this service. So we have refined our content a lot over the last 7.5 years. So some questions. Purpose. Why does your business exist? Your vision. What's the business going to look like in 5 years? What values do the people in your business need to possess? What are the key drivers in the business, those key performance indicators? Because 3 or 5 of those are going to make their way into the business plan, and you want to get your clients' insights into this. What's your ideal customer, and what's the value proposition for those customers? And what are the biggest 3 opportunities? And here's a little trick as a facilitator. If you ask for 3 things from a client, you will get 3. If you ask for 5, you'll probably get 5. If you ask for 500, you won't get 500. But as a facilitator, you can lead your clients to giving you the amount of information, how much or how little you actually need. So what are the 3 biggest opportunities in the business? What are the vulnerabilities? What keeps you awake at night? What are the challenges you have meeting the needs of your family, personal life, your business? Does this sound familiar to you as business owners? I'm sure it does. And what are the critical challenges that you need to address in the next 12 months? What are your short-term business goals? So this is all going to help you in the context of putting that business plan together. Okay, so that's fantastic. I'm now going to show you, very importantly, I talked before about delivery notes. And for those of you who ever put a new service into their business, you should always have delivery notes, because if you have a new service that's beyond compliance, we've all been doing compliance for a very, very long time, right? And it's almost like riding a bike. It gets to that point where, oh gosh, I actually have to tell you a funny story, Charles. I actually taught someone in our team how to do a journal entry yesterday in Xero. And he said, oh God, Viv, it's like falling off a bike, isn't it? Okay, so compliance is like falling off a bike for us. But when we put a new service in our business, it's just not naturally intuitive to begin with. And so for all of our business advisory services, we have delivery notes. And I just want to show you those now. And I'll just move that over, and I'll just download these delivery notes so that you can see them a bit better on the screen. And I'll just blow that up a bit, maybe. Hopefully that looks good. And so you can see that these delivery notes have segments in them and suggested timings and what you need to cover. Now, nothing always goes according to plan, but this means you could actually run a business planning session off the bat if you'd never done one before. And we have not necessarily best practice, but we have got firms who've done this before. And a good place to practice is on your own firm. The next place to practice is on a friendly client, could be a relative. We all have those in our business. It could be a friendly client who you say to, look, this is the first time I've run this service. I'm really keen on your feedback, so that you learn in that great environment. So welcome, and what you do in the first 10 minutes, how you cover the agenda for the 4-hour session. Let's get into the purpose of the business, remembering we've got our pre-work to support here and what the client has put in their pre-work. What's your vision for the business? What do you want to achieve? What do the owners want out of the business? And that's how much in the way of annual drawings, that's how many hours they want to work, that's also the family holidays they want to take from the businesses. This is raw and real and very personal to them. Business values, and this is not a core values workshop, this is just a general overview of values. That's a separate service that you could provide in the future. And then let's do a bottom-up budget. You've said what you want from the business. Can the business deliver that? So we'll just start with what we want from the business, that profit, and then we'll work up to knowing our fixed costs, up to our GP, and therefore the sales level. Now reality check, can we achieve that sales level? So the delivery notes cover all of this. And the PreWork from the client supports it. What are the 3 to 5 key performance indicators that the business needs to focus on? Not 15. We have to keep it to the most serious drivers in the business. Bit of a check-in. Ideal client and the value prop for those clients. Opportunities, critical challenges, and now we're into the goals section, and you can see that the delivery notes follows the format of the business planning template, and so it's very intuitive. And so we're going to spend some time, and we're going to get down to 3 to 5 annual goals, not 15. We want this business plan on 1 page front and back, not 30 pages. A 30-page business plan is not worth more than a 1-page business plan. I would argue that it is worth less because it's going to end up in the bottom drawer. And then we're going to drill down to the 90-day goals and then down to the 90-day actions. And next steps, we're going to probably position that accountability framework where they do a check-in with us for an hour every quarter to make sure the goals are refreshed. Look at that last question. 3 things of value. What are the 3 things of value you gain from this business planning session? And you can ask it however you like, but that's excellent material for you for marketing. It's great to reinforce their learnings. And most importantly, it is fundamental in terms of making sure that they have had the value. Okay, so we go back and in we go. So the other 2 things I'll show you very quickly is an example business plan, example plan on 1 page. And here we go. And you'll see that the format here on the business plan is absolutely the same as those delivery notes I just took you through. So here we have the purpose, the vision, what we want to achieve, the values, the bottom-up budget, starting with profit, working our way up to turnover, and what we're going to achieve for the first quarter. The 5 key performance indicators that are most crucial to that business, client, value prop, the biggest opportunities, and you keep this down to a maximum of 5. The vulnerabilities we need to manage, our 1 most critical challenge, because that keeps us focused on the risks in our business. Our 1-year goals, and you can see in this case, we've got 3 goals, not 30. You can't achieve 30 goals. It's not doable. 1-year goals broken down into the 90-day goals and broken down into the actions. And so it's very, very straightforward. And of course, finally, I will show you this because it's actually very important to join up all the dots. And here is an example of some minutes. You could call it an action list, but it's minutes of the session. So there will generally be a few items that come up during the business planning session that really aren't relevant to the business plan. They don't belong in the business plan. An insurance review doesn't belong in the business plan. The fact that you need to do some more work together doesn't belong in the business plan. But these minutes just keep track of everything and make sure that these things do happen. The things you say you're going to do happen, the things they say they're going to do happen. So there's some follow-up actions not documented in the plan. There's follow-up required for additional services. So you positioned that quarterly coaching, that quarterly accountability framework to make sure the plan stays alive and to hold them to account. You need to get that proposal out there, and we need to not lose sight of that. And look at what we've done here. We've recorded those 3 things of value. And that's something you can remind your clients of, and that's really important for building your self-confidence. Okay, so look, I'm actually going to go back to the slides now, and we're going to go to questions very shortly, Charles, and we seem to be going okay for time.
Yeah, and we've
Bit of
got
a
some
crash
good
course, but we're
questions coming
getting
up
there.
too.
Now, this is a survey that we ran before a virtual masterclass for our GAP member firms late last year. We asked them a number of questions. We asked them this question in particular: what percentage of your business clients, now we're talking real businesses, not micro business, not those little hobbies, but what percentage of your business clients do you think need an annual business plan? And a whopping over 40% said all of them, which was, now I know that our GAP member firms are believers, and so I'll take that into account, but hey, I'll take that as a win. And we had somewhere between 20 and 25% said between 26 and 50% of our clients. So even if we really scaled back, hey, even if we said 5% of our clients, what I'm saying to you is the size of the opportunity to help your clients is huge. So it's worthwhile, whether you look at us, whether you use another system, or whether you develop your own system, it's really worthwhile looking at how this can actually really add value to your clients, because the size of the opportunity is huge, because the need is huge, and the value that you can add to your clients is massive. Okay, so just a little a word on marketing before we go to questions. Now, there's a lot of ways to market this business planning service. You can do that at any client meeting, and we have various ways of doing that that are in our GAP portal. We've actually created nearly 20 webinar and seminar kits that position different business advisory services, including the annual business plan. And these things subtly position it, and then you start following it up with your content marketing. So there's multi-channel GAP content ready to go on the Boma platform, and it works beautifully. We've got a huge number of our GAP firms are actually on the Boma platform. And so if you're not on the Boma platform and you're a GAP firm, then you should be looking at the Boma platform. If you're on the Boma platform and you're a GAP firm and you're not accessing our premium content, you need to get an unlock code from us. So make sure you do that. So there's a ton, there's hundreds of articles to position events and to position these services. They're well written, and you can, change the content a little bit and the images so that you don't get punished from an SEO perspective. So we're going to go to questions. There's an exit survey that I know that will turn up towards the end of the webinar, or at the end. Please make sure you give us some feedback. If you want to have a bit of a look at Boma or the GAP, just tick the box. If you want to actually book a demo with one of the team, by all means, go ahead. If you're a GAP and Boma subscriber, please make sure that you're using our premium content, because it is beautiful. And the Boma platform is fantastic. So on that note, and Charles, by all means, let's go to questions.
Okay, so we've got 5 so far, and we'll do our best if any more come in while we're chatting. So the first one is, what's the most effective way to involve subject matter experts if they don't have this in-house?
I'm really not quite sure of the question, actually, Charles, in the context of a business planning. See if you can just tease a little bit more out from that person.
Yeah.
So subject matter experts on business planning?
I'm assuming it might, he said, i.e. other expertise in consulting, if that helps shed any light.
Can we get an example, please? Can we have an example on that? Then I can credibly answer the question.
Yeah.
So I can.
And look, while that's happening, about the business planning, I have a client taking this up, one-off annual plan. It reads like we should be using that to springboard into regular, i.e. quarterly meets. And this person will obviously push for them, but knowing my client, in brackets, a bit cheap, I don't think he'll go for recurring. So is this a waste of time, i.e. the initial meet? Or I suppose the underlying question is how would we get them from an initial meet to a regular recurring
Good question.
meeting?
There's a few questions in that one question, but great question. First of all, let's not leap to judgment about our clients. That's what I call the curse of assumptions. We've all been guilty of it. I've been guilty of it. You won't know until you ask. Position the value. The value is in accountability. When you have somebody holding to you to account, you get more done. It's just a fact. Anyone who's been to a directors meeting knows that. Anyone who's had a coach themselves, myself, I'm sure you've had coaching in the past, Charles, know that you get more done when somebody holds you to account. Here's a little tip. Position the value towards at the end of the business planning session. Now, your client, if they are a bit of a cheapskate, might say something like, that's great, I can see the value, but you know what, I think I can do this myself, and you know what, I think my wife can hold me to account and we can do it together. Well, I think we all know that's not really going to work, right? And you really don't want your husband or wife being your accountability coach. So rather than saying that's a bad idea and making them feel bad about themselves, a great thing to say could be something like, that's fantastic that you're going to go ahead. I'd love to check in with you in 90 days and see how that's going. Is it okay if I give you a call or drop you a line? And so ask for their permission to check in again. And you are going to probably find they haven't done it. So there's, no sometimes just means not now, but don't make assumptions, position the value and check in later.
Right.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Just circling back to that previous question in terms of subject matter experts, the examples this person gave were sort of specialist consultants for, say, HR, legal, marketing, etc.
Yeah. Well, of course, when you're doing a business plan, you don't need specialist consultants in the room. You don't, because you're setting goals and you're setting actions. And this is your client's business plan, it's not yours. So let's imagine that one of the goals is to increase, maybe the business has got poor team retention. So one of the goals is to increase retention to 98%. I don't know, I've just plucked that out of thin air, Charles. So and there's a 90-day goal, which is to put some NPS or some NPS scores in place and get some team engagement surveys happening. Maybe one of the actions is to talk to an HR specialist. And so that's the point at which you need to be able to recommend someone if they don't already have someone. But you typically do not need specialist consultants in the room at a business planning session, because what you're doing is you're setting goals. You're not solving problems in the business planning session, if that makes sense.
Fantastic. Another question, is it better to have 2 team members working on this for each client in case one is away, the other one can run the meeting?
Okay, so we talk about buddy learning at the Gap, and if you've got somebody new to business planning and you've got maybe one of the senior accountants or one of the directors has run these sessions a couple of times and kind of know the ropes, by all means have a senior accountant to learn how to deliver sitting in, and they can just sit in as an observer. But typically, if the key person advising that client should be running the business planning session. And so if they were unavailable, they would just reschedule. Typically, you don't need 2 people in the room at once, unless you're training someone.
Okay, and actually this next question sort of links on from this one, which is in terms of, note-taking during the session, would you suggest they record them or sort of take notes as you go? Because it might be quite hard to sort of take notes and be running it yourself.
Yeah, okay. So in the business planning session, what we say to firms is they've got 2 tabs open in the portal. They've got the business planning template open and they're populating. The client can see it on the screen. So you've got it on a lot of you have got a TV screen, or if you're doing it online, they'll see it on the screen. The client can see it because they can say, oh, that's not quite right, or that, I can't do that in that time frame, or no, so-and-so will do that, not me. So you've got the business plan tab open. You've also got the minutes tab open to record other actions, but you may also be taking some notes off in another document or manually, where you're actually just recording some other interesting things that were said. But typically, recording things in the business planning template itself and the minutes template will be enough. And by the way, What I wouldn't suggest is not best practice, because we are 2022, is that you do this big recording and then you ask someone else in the team, your EA, to transcribe it all and put it into the business plan. That is very inefficient. It's not involving the client and it's their plan. They can't see the plan building in front of you, right? It's going to go seesaw backwards and forwards. It's going to be a week before the client gets the business plan. That business plan should be out to them and it should reach their email before they get back to their business. So really on the spot, dynamic, involved process with the client.
We've got 2 more questions. I think we've got time. Another one is, I provided pre-work to the client. It was a one-man band, and their answers were pretty much linked to the business plan that they'd written, which made it easy, but also tough to work out the session when the plan. I think the question is, when the plan was already written during the session, do you go into more depth in the business plan and talk through their work, or just confirm it's what they want and then push it out to the next meeting?
Yeah. I mean, you don't just the pre-work is just a discovery phase. You're actually starting to get in the mind of what the client's thinking and where the areas of alignment between the partners are. You don't just, there are some things in the pre-work that you could go ahead and populate into the business plans. For example, if they've already established the values in the business or their ideal customer, for example. But typically you won't just go and populate the goals they've come up with into the business plan, because often clients don't know how to actually describe a goal. For example, a goal has to be smart, it has to be specific, it has to be measurable, it has to be achievable, it has to be relevant, and it has to be time bound. So there's a real getting that goal so it is all of those things, and the difference between a goal and an action as well. Clients don't really necessarily see the subtlety there. So there's a lot more than the pre-work does not create the business plan. There's a lot more to it than that. Yeah.
And then two more questions which are around pricing, and I'll sort of read them out at the same time. The first one is, what should you be charging for this particular session? And then the second one is, what fee ranges do you recommend for the quarterly meetings?
Okay, great questions. The first one is, I can tell you that across New Zealand and Australia, won't speak for the UK in this session, that the median for the 4-hour business planning session is about an hour's work if you combine the before and after. So let's say it's 5 hours work if you want to work out the hourly rate, which as accountants we tend to. The median charge rate we're seeing is around the 2,300. I can tell you there are plenty of firms charging 2.5, and I know of firms in Auckland, for example, that are charging $3,000 for that session. So it's most definitely a more valuable hourly rate than compliance. In terms of that quarterly coaching rhythm, let's imagine it's a 1-hour accountability session. I'm seeing everything from $400 to $750 for that 1-hour coaching session. Once again, there's a little bit of pre-work and there's a little bit of post-work, but not much. Yeah, so it's a bit of a range, but probably less of a range than you see in compliance.
Well, so that's all the questions we have. I think we're sort of at about the end of our time. So goodness me, there was a lot of interesting questions in there, and I think I definitely got a lot of value out of there, so I hope you did as well. Viv, thank you so much for coming today, and for everyone who is on here, we'll be sending you out a recording tomorrow, along with a bit of a follow-up email, so keep an eye out for that.
You're welcome. And hey guys, I hope everyone online got some value today. Great to have you all online today, and great to be talking about a subject that's pretty dear to the GAP's heart, you delivering value to your clients through business planning. Thanks, Charles.
Thanks, Viv. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.